Most home gardeners have a strawberry patch. Some have blueberry bushes. A few have annual herbs and vegetables tucked into every available corner. And almost every single one of them replants, restarts, or replaces something in that food garden every single year. New strawberry runners that did not take. Blueberry bushes that never really produced. Annual vegetables that need starting from scratch every spring no matter how well last year went. The cycle of effort, disappointment, and trying again next spring is so common in the home food garden that most gardeners have quietly accepted it as just the way things are. It is not. There is an entirely different category of edible plants that most home gardeners have never seriously considered. Plants that produce food you will genuinely prefer over store-bought strawberries. Plants that get more abundant and more flavorful every single year rather than less. And plants that once established ask almost nothing of you in return. No replanting. No restarting. No annual cycle of effort and disappointment. Just food. Year after year after year. Some of these plants will still be feeding your family 20 years from now. A few of them will outlive you entirely. Here are 15 edible perennials that taste better than strawberries, produce for decades, and require virtually zero replanting once they are in the ground. Welcome to Beyond Garden. Before we go plant by plant, the same regional principle applies here that applies to everything we cover on this channel. Where you live in the United States changes which of these plants will thrive, which varieties to choose, and how quickly each one establishes. I will call out USDA zones for every plant on this list so you know exactly which ones belong in your garden right now. Drop a comment below and tell me your state and your growing zone, and tell me which fruits you are already growing, because that context helps me give you better advice every single week. Let us get into it. Plant 1. Honeyberry, Haskap. Most people have never tasted a honeyberry. That is a genuine shame because the flavor is unlike anything in the standard home fruit garden. A deep, complex blend of blueberry, blackcurrant, and a faint hint of cherry that most people describe as the most interesting fruit they have ever eaten straight off the bush. The first time someone hands you a ripe Haskap berry off the plant, you will immediately understand why this fruit has been cultivated for centuries in Russia, Japan, and Scandinavia while remaining almost completely unknown in the American home garden. Honeyberries bloom and ripen extraordinarily early, often the very first fruit of the season, ready to harvest in late May or early June before strawberries, before blueberries, before almost anything else in a garden. They produce heavily on compact upright bushes reaching 4 to 6 feet tall, and a single mature plant can yield 3 to 7 pounds of fruit per season. They thrive in zones 3 through 8, making them one of the most cold-hardy fruiting perennials available. A gardener in Zone 3 Minnesota who struggles with most soft fruit will find honeyberries not just surviving but genuinely thriving. You need 2 different varieties for cross-pollination. Tundra and Borealis is the most reliable pairing for most zones. Plant in full sun in well-drained soil, water well through the first season to establish, and then step back. These plants live for 30 to 40 years and get more productive with every passing decade. Plant 2. Gooseberry. The gooseberry has a reputation problem in America that has nothing to do with how the fruit actually tastes. Most Americans have never eaten a fully ripe gooseberry straight from the bush. They have only encountered the unripe green ones used for cooking, which are indeed sharp and tart. A fully ripe gooseberry is something else entirely. Depending on the variety, the flavor ranges from sweet tart and intensely fruity to almost tropical, with a translucent skin that bursts with juice unlike any berry most gardeners have grown before. Gooseberries produce prolifically on compact thorny bushes reaching 3 to 5 feet, thriving in zones 3 through 8 in full sun to partial shade, one of the few fruiting plants that genuinely tolerates and even appreciates some afternoon shade, making it ideal for spots that stump most other fruit growers. Invicta is the gold standard for heavy production. Hinonmaki Red produces a sweeter, almost dessert-quality berry with exceptional flavor. Captivator is nearly thornless, making harvest dramatically easier. Plant in rich, well-drained soil, mulch heavily, and feed with a balanced fertilizer in early spring. Established gooseberry bushes produce reliably for 20 years or more with minimal intervention. A well-placed gooseberry in the right spot is essentially a permanent fixture of the garden that keeps delivering season after season. Plant 3. Blackcurrant. If you want to grow a fruit that the rest of the world considers one of the finest berries available, but that most American gardeners have never tasted fresh from the bush, blackcurrant is it. The flavor is bold, complex, intensely fruity, and unlike anything produced by a strawberry or blueberry, rich and deep with a slight tartness that makes it extraordinary eaten fresh, baked into a crumble, or made into preserves. Vitamin C content is 4 times that of an orange. Antioxidant levels are among the highest of any commonly grown fruit. Blackcurrant bushes grow vigorously to 4 to 5 feet tall and wide, producing heavy clusters of glossy black berries that ripen in mid to late summer. They thrive in zones 3 through 7, preferring cool, moist climates and rich, well-drained soil. Ben Hope and Ben Sarek are the most reliably productive varieties for American home gardens, both showing strong resistance to powdery mildew, which is the main challenge in warmer zones. Plant in full sun for maximum yield, though they will tolerate partial shade better than most fruiting plants. Feed with a potassium-rich fertilizer in spring. Potassium directly drives berry production in currants. Once established, a blackcurrant bush produces reliably for 15 to 20 years. Prune out the oldest wood every 3 years to keep yields high. That is genuinely the only significant maintenance this plant asks for. Plant 4. Jostaberry. The jostaberry is what happens when you cross a blackcurrant with a gooseberry and keep all the best qualities of both. The result is a vigorous thornless bush producing large dark berries with a flavor that starts with the richness of blackcurrant and finishes with the sweet tart complexity of a perfectly ripe gooseberry. It is genuinely one of the most underplanted fruits in the American home garden, easy to grow, thornless for easy harvest, disease-resistant, and producing fruit that most people who taste it immediately want to grow themselves. Jostaberry bushes are vigorous, reaching 5 to 6 feet tall, and a single established plant produces 8 to 10 pounds of fruit per season, significantly more than most blackcurrant or gooseberry varieties on their own. They thrive in zones 3 through 8 in full sun to partial shade, are self-fertile so a single plant produces without a pollinator partner, and are notably resistant to the diseases that affect their parent plants. Plant in rich, well-drained soil, mulch well, and water through the first season. After that, established jostaberry plants are remarkably self-sufficient. Pruning out a third of the oldest wood every few years is the primary maintenance task. The combination of high yield, exceptional flavor, complete absence of thorns, and genuine longevity makes jostaberry one of the most compelling plants on this entire list for any gardener who wants serious fruit production with minimal ongoing effort. Plant 5. Elderberry. Elderberry is simultaneously one of the most beautiful and one of the most productive fruiting perennials available to home gardeners, and it remains dramatically underplanted in American home gardens despite being native to large parts of North America and thriving across an enormous range of growing conditions. The large flat-topped clusters of small dark berries ripen in late summer and early fall, producing yields of 10 to 15 pounds per mature plant in a good year. The flavor is rich, winey, and deeply complex, extraordinary in syrups, wines, preserves, and baked goods. Elderberry grows vigorously to 8 to 12 feet tall, making it as much a landscape shrub as a fruit producer. The flat white flower clusters in early summer are genuinely stunning before the berries develop. It thrives in zones 3 through 9, tolerating wet soils, partial shade, and difficult conditions that would challenge most other fruiting plants. Bob Gordon and Nova are the most reliably productive varieties for home gardens. Plant 2 different varieties for cross-pollination and maximum yield. Elderberries establish quickly and begin producing meaningfully in their second or third year, reaching peak production from year 5 onward and maintaining that productivity for decades. The only significant management task is cutting the oldest canes back to the ground every few years to keep the plant producing vigorously. A simple task that takes minutes and directly pays off in the following season's yield. Plant 6. Lingonberry. Lingonberry is the fruit that Scandinavians have been eating alongside every meal for centuries, and that most American gardeners have never considered growing despite its exceptional cold hardiness, low maintenance requirements, and genuinely delicious flavor. The small bright red berries have a tart, cranberry-like flavor with a complexity and freshness that makes them extraordinary eaten fresh, made into the traditional Swedish sauce that accompanies nearly everything, or baked into pastries. Unlike cranberries, lingonberries do not require a bog environment. They grow as a compact ground cover reaching 8 to 12 inches tall, making them one of the most space-efficient fruiting plants available. Lingonberries thrive in zones 3 through 7 in acidic, well-drained soil, similar conditions to blueberries but in a far more compact and ground-covering form. Polaris and Corral are the most productive varieties for American gardens, both producing 2 crops per year in favorable conditions, one in early summer and a larger one in fall. They spread slowly by underground runners to form a dense weed-suppressing mat, making them as useful as a ground cover as they are as a fruit producer. Plant in partial shade in hotter zones, full sun in cooler zones. Acidify the soil with sulfur or peat moss before planting and maintain a consistent mulch of pine needles or wood chips. Once established, lingonberry plants are genuinely self-sufficient. They rarely need supplemental watering, never need replanting, and will quietly carpet the ground and produce fruit for decades without asking for much of anything in return. Plant 7. Aronia, chokeberry. Aronia, commonly called chokeberry, is one of those plants that consistently surprises people on 2 fronts simultaneously. First, the fruit. While the raw berry is indeed astringent enough to make you pucker, the fully ripe berry processed into juice, wine, syrup, or dried fruit has a flavor that is rich, intensely dark, and extraordinarily complex. Second, the antioxidant content. Aronia berries consistently test among the highest antioxidant levels of any fruit in the world, significantly higher than blueberries, which is why this plant has been cultivated commercially in Eastern Europe for decades while remaining almost unknown in American home gardens. Aronia bushes grow to 5 to 8 feet tall and are among the most ornamental fruiting plants available. The white spring flowers, heavy clusters of dark berries in late summer, and brilliant red fall foliage make this a 4-season landscape plant that happens to also produce extraordinary fruit. It thrives in zones 3 through 8, tolerating wet, poorly drained soils, partial shade, and difficult conditions that would challenge most fruit plants. Viking and Nero are the most productive varieties for home gardens. No cross-pollination is needed. A single plant produces reliably. Established plants require almost no maintenance beyond an occasional thinning of the oldest stems, and they produce prolifically for decades once settled into their permanent position in the garden. Plant 8. Mulberry. A ripe mulberry picked directly from the tree is one of the most extraordinary fruit-eating experiences available in the home garden. Intensely sweet, deeply colored, with a complex flavor that no store-bought fruit ever replicates because mulberries are simply too delicate to survive commercial harvesting and distribution. The berries ripen over several weeks from early to mid-summer in a continuous trickle that means fresh fruit every day rather than a single overwhelming harvest all at once. Mulberry trees grow vigorously to 20 to 30 feet if left unpruned but respond extremely well to training as a compact multi-stem shrub or a small tree kept to 10 to 12 feet with annual pruning, making them more manageable for the average home garden than their ultimate size suggests. They thrive in zones 4 through 8, tolerating poor soil, drought, heat, and partial shade with a resilience that few fruit trees can match. Illinois Everbearing is the standard variety for American home gardens, self-fertile, producing from early summer through August, and extraordinarily productive. A mature mulberry in a good year can produce more fruit than a family can reasonably consume, making it one of the highest yield fruiting plants per unit of care of anything on this list. Plant in full sun in well-drained soil, water through the first season, and then step back entirely. A well-placed mulberry tree asks for almost nothing and delivers more fruit than almost any other permanent planting you can make. Plant 9. Autumn olive. Autumn olive is one of the most misunderstood plants in American horticulture, classified as invasive in many U.S. states including Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, Maryland, Virginia, Illinois, and others due to its aggressive self-seeding in wild and natural areas. Before planting, check your specific state's invasive species list. In states where it is listed, planting it is either discouraged or restricted, and Beyond Garden always recommends following your local guidelines. For gardeners in states where it is not listed as invasive, managed correctly in a home garden setting, it is one of the most productive and nutritionally extraordinary edible perennials available. The small silvery red berries that ripen in fall have a sweet tart flavor with a slight astringency that becomes genuinely addictive, and the lycopene content is significantly higher than tomatoes, one of the richest plant-based sources of this important antioxidant available to home gardeners. Autumn olive thrives in zones 3 through 8, growing to 8 to 12 feet tall in virtually any soil condition including poor, dry, and rocky ground where most fruiting plants would struggle entirely. It is nitrogen-fixing, which means it actually improves the soil around it rather than depleting it. The key to managing it responsibly in a home garden is to harvest every single berry before it drops and to remove any seedlings that establish outside your intended planting area immediately. Consistent management is non-negotiable with this plant. A single established shrub produces 20 to 25 pounds of berries per season from late September through October. Food at exactly the point in the season when almost everything else in the garden has finished, which makes it one of the most valuable gap fillers in the home food garden calendar for gardeners in states where it can be responsibly grown. Plant 10. Sea buckthorn. Sea buckthorn is the plant that nutritionists and foragers have been excited about for years, while most home gardeners have never heard of it. The bright orange berries that cover every stem in extraordinary abundance from late summer through winter have a flavor described as a cross between mango, pineapple, and citrus, genuinely tropical tasting from a plant that thrives in some of the harshest growing conditions in the northern hemisphere. Vitamin C content is 15 times that of an orange. The berries are so nutritionally dense that they have been used in traditional medicine across Russia, China, and Scandinavia for centuries. Sea buckthorn thrives in zones 3 through 7, growing to 8 to 12 feet tall in full sun and tolerating poor, sandy, dry soil with the same nitrogen-fixing ability as autumn olive. You need one male plant for every 6 to 8 female plants for pollination. The male plant produces no fruit, but is essential for the females to produce. Lycora is the most productive female variety for American gardens. The thorny stems make harvesting a challenge. The most effective technique is to cut entire berry-laden branches in late fall and freeze them briefly, after which the frozen berries separate easily from the stems. Once established, sea buckthorn plants are virtually indestructible and produce prolifically for decades, making the initial challenge of harvest setup well worth the long-term return. Plant 11. Cornelian cherry. The cornelian cherry is not actually a cherry. It is a member of the dogwood family that produces small elongated red fruit with a flavor that has been described as a more complex, deeper version of a sour cherry with a plum-like richness that makes it extraordinary in preserves, wines, and eaten fresh when fully ripe. It is one of the oldest cultivated fruits in human history, eaten across Europe and Western Asia for thousands of years, and it remains almost entirely unknown in American home gardens despite being perfectly suited to a wide range of American growing conditions. Cornelian cherry grows as a large multi-stemmed shrub or small tree reaching 15 to 20 feet, producing clouds of tiny yellow flowers in late winter, often February or March, that are among the earliest blooms of any fruiting plant and spectacularly beautiful against bare winter branches. It thrives in zones 4 through 8 in full sun to partial shade, tolerating poor soil and drought once established. Harvest is in late summer when the berries turn deep red and soften slightly. Fully ripe fruit is significantly sweeter than unripe and worth waiting for. A mature cornelian cherry produces 20 to 30 pounds of fruit per season and lives for 100 years or more. Quite literally a permanent addition to the garden that will likely be harvested by future generations long after you have planted it. Plant 12. Pawpaw. The pawpaw is the largest edible fruit native to North America and one of the best-kept secrets in American horticulture. The flavor of a fully ripe pawpaw, soft, custardy, intensely tropical, tasting like a cross between banana, mango, and vanilla custard, is so extraordinary that the people who discover it almost universally cannot understand why it is not grown and sold everywhere. The reason it is not commercially available is exactly the same reason it is perfect for the home garden. The fruit is so delicate and perishable that it cannot survive commercial harvesting, shipping, and distribution. To taste a pawpaw at its best, you essentially have to grow your own. Pawpaw trees grow to 15 to 20 feet tall, thriving in zones 5 through 9 in partial shade to full sun with moist, well-drained soil. They are native to the eastern United States, growing wild from Florida to Michigan, and their native adaptability means they establish readily in most eastern garden settings. You need 2 different varieties for cross-pollination. Shenandoah and Susquehanna is the most recommended pairing for home gardens. Pawpaw trees begin producing meaningfully in their 3rd to 5th year and reach peak production from year 8 onward, producing 30 to 60 pounds of fruit per mature tree in a good season. The fruit ripens in September and October. Pick it slightly underripe and ripen it at room temperature for a few days to develop the full extraordinary flavor that makes this one of the most memorable things you can grow in a home garden. Plant 13. Ché fruit, Cudrania. The ché fruit is perhaps the least known plant on this entire list and also one of the most rewarding discoveries for any gardener willing to seek it out. The round mulberry-like fruit ripens to a deep red in late summer, offering a flavor that most people describe as a sweeter, more complex version of a mulberry with a hint of fig, intensely sweet, soft, and unusual enough to make every visitor to your garden ask what it is. The tree itself is ornamental, with glossy dark green leaves, a spreading architectural form, and a drought tolerance that makes it suitable for some of the most challenging garden spots. Ché fruit trees grow to 20 to 30 feet if unpruned but respond well to training and pruning to maintain a more compact form. They thrive in zones 5 through 10, one of the wider zone ranges on this list, making it suitable for gardeners from the mid-Atlantic all the way to Southern California and the Gulf Coast. They are self-fertile, requiring no cross-pollination partner, and once established are extraordinarily drought-tolerant and virtually pest and disease-free. A mature ché tree produces prolifically over a long ripening window from mid to late summer, and the fruit drops cleanly when ripe, making harvest as simple as checking the ground beneath the tree daily. Plant in full sun in well-drained soil, water through the first season, and then essentially leave it alone for decades of quiet production. Plant 14. Groundnut, Apios americana. Groundnut sits in a unique position on this list. It is both an above-ground food producer and a root crop simultaneously, making it arguably the most productive edible perennial per square foot of any plant here. It qualifies as an edible perennial in the truest sense. It grows back stronger every year, produces food both above and below ground, and never needs replanting once established. Native to eastern North America and eaten by indigenous peoples and early American colonists for centuries, the groundnut produces small edible bean-like pods above ground while simultaneously producing a string of starchy tubers underground that taste remarkably like a sweeter, nuttier potato. The above-ground beans have a rich, meaty flavor that makes them excellent in soups and stews. The underground tubers have 3 times the protein content of a regular potato. Groundnut is a vining plant that climbs to 8 to 10 feet, thriving in zones 3 through 9 in moist to average soil in full sun to partial shade. Its native habitat is the edge of streams and woodland clearings, so it is particularly valuable in the damp, partially shaded spots that challenge most food plants. It spreads by underground runners to form a gradually expanding colony that can be harvested selectively without disturbing the whole planting. Dig some tubers in fall, leave the rest to continue growing, and the colony expands and becomes more productive every year. A well-established groundnut planting is essentially a permanent underground larder that replenishes itself annually and asks for almost nothing in return beyond being left in place and occasionally harvested. Plant 15. Honey locust, Gladitsia. We close this list with a plant that challenges every conventional idea of what an edible perennial looks like in a home garden. The honey locust tree produces long flat seed pods in fall that contain a sweet, honey-like pulp surrounding the seeds. The pulp is edible and genuinely delicious, tasting of a mild floral honey with a slight vanilla note. One important clarification: it is the sweet pulp between the seeds that is eaten, not the seeds themselves, which are not edible and should not be consumed. Indigenous peoples ate the pulp fresh and used it to make a sweetened beverage. The pods ripen in late September and October, hanging on the tree through early winter and providing a food source at exactly the point in the season when most other fruit has been harvested and finished. Thornless honey locust varieties, specifically Gladitsia triacanthos inermis, grow to 40 to 70 feet tall, thriving in zones 3 through 9 in virtually any soil condition including poor, dry, compacted, and alkaline ground that would challenge or kill most fruit trees. The feathery compound leaves create a light dappled shade that allows underplanting with other food plants, making the honey locust a genuine garden system rather than just a single producing tree. As a long-term investment in the home garden, few plants match the combination of extreme hardiness, exceptional longevity. These trees live for 100 years or more, complete low maintenance once established, and the quiet, steady production of a genuinely unusual and delicious crop at the end of every fall season for generations to come. That is 15 edible perennials that will produce more, taste better, and ask less of you than a strawberry patch that needs replanting every few years. Most of these plants are available from specialist nurseries and online growers. Search for each variety name specifically rather than just the common name to make sure you are getting the right cultivar for your zone. Start with 2 or 3 that suit your growing conditions and your taste preferences and build from there. The investment you make in any of these plants this season is an investment that pays dividends not just this year and next year but potentially for the rest of your gardening life. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these 15 caught you most off guard, and tell me your state and zone while you are at it. If you found this useful, share it with one person in your life who is tired of replanting the same strawberry patch every spring. Subscribe to Beyond Garden if you have not already. Every week we bring you real, specific, actionable gardening information built around what your garden actually needs. Keep growing.